Hello and welcome to the latest edition of a Sustainability Perspectives podcast, where as part of the virtual portion of the Sustainable Packaging Summit, we hear from a range of different packaging experts to learn more about how their company tackles the sustainability challenges the world faces. So my name is Elisabeth Skura, and today I'm very pleased to welcome Marike Knorr, who is Head of Sustainability and Communication at CCL Label, and also Stephen Langstaff, who is Head of Recycling at Innovia Films. CCL Labels and Innovia Films are both part of CCL Industries. Together, we're today going to explore sustainable advancements in labels and films, from innovative materials and improved functionality to incorporating recycled content and much more. So, welcome both. Really pleased to be speaking to you today and looking forward to hearing your insights.
Thank you very much. Good morning, and thanks for the invitation.
Welcome. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much.
Great. And I wanted to start with quite a broad question. And I was wondering, what areas have you been focusing on to boost, say, sustainability in your respective areas? Maybe starting with you, Marike.
So I think for this question, I would like to take a step back from like products and production and everything, and maybe focus on one of the most important areas that we have to try to improve in the last couple of years to really drive sustainability on a higher level. And that is the upskilling of our own staff, because as you can imagine, the way we do business has changed fundamentally within the last couple of years, with sustainability becoming a priority, but also the interest in, how does my packaging get recycled in the end, design for recycling guidelines and so on. So our role, especially in sales, has changed from delivering labels, which of course we still do, but also to being an advisor to the brands and to our brand customers. So this was like the first step that we took to take a holistic view and to see how we can upskill our staff, how we can make sure that everybody knows the common recycling processes for PET, for example, HDPE, PP, and all other packaging that we decorate. So this was the first step to boost sustainability, to enable us to advise on design for recycling guidelines, for example. Then the other big field that we have been looking on and working on is a decarbonization journey, because as you can imagine, all big brands have pledged to decarbonize, and we are part of this whole journey. So we have submitted goals to the SBTi, the Science Based Targets Initiative, and are also doing our part on the side. And I think those two have been, for me at least, the large focus areas. And I'll let Steve comment on the packaging side of it, the product side.
Yeah, from a packaging side and a film side, the areas that we've been involved with really cover an awful large area. Basically, the first thing that we've been looking at is the recyclability of our films. Are our films recyclable as advised by the guidelines from CFLEX and Recyclus? So that's a very important first step. Following that step, the whole area of putting recycled content into films is very important, and then the inclusion of monomaterial solutions. So getting all polypropylene solutions that replace laminates of, say, polyester with polypropylene with foil in there. How do we make all polypropylene solutions? Reducing carbon footprint in terms of our raw materials. So by using a bio-sourced polypropylene material is a key part of our ongoing carbon reduction plan.
Yes, and we're going to delve a bit deeper into some of the things you both mentioned a little bit later. But first, I wanted to ask you, Steve, what have been some of the key challenges to overcome when it comes to making films more sustainable?
Yeah, legislation, I think, is becoming a real challenge. Legislation is often running somewhat behind what the industry wants to achieve. And so PPWR is great, seeing the first draft of that and all of that now being accepted. But it's now the secondary legislation is where the real meat is. And so what is that secondary legislation going to demand? I think other areas we talked earlier about recycling and whether materials can be recycled, and the guidelines coming from Recyclas and the guidelines coming from CFLEX. And sometimes you have contradictions between those two, and that can be difficult. The whole area of use of EVOHs and PVOHs in packaging films is not completely clear or well defined. Information coming from key bodies needs to be quicker and defined simpler. And then another key aspect is customers are getting prepared for all of these rules of PPWR, but basically they aren't buying. So we talked about monomaterial laminates. We have many customers working with our films to produce monomaterial laminates, but actually how much of that is now getting its way into significant sales is comparatively small when you compare with the effort that we've put in. So I think those are the two big areas and challenges that we have to overcome.
I wanted to ask you a bit more about the monomaterial packaging, which is obviously an important step towards improving recyclability. But what are the main challenges to developing these polypropylene films with additional functionality? And also, what about recycling these monomaterial structures in practice and not just in theory?
Yeah, there are certainly some challenges. And I think I would say regarding the development of polypropylene films to make all polypropylene solutions is absolutely fundamental to what we're looking at. The first thing I would say is you can't change the laws of physics. If you're trying to compare a foil that is currently in a laminate, which basically has a total barrier to oxygen, to greases, to gases, you're not going to get a polypropylene to do that. The same comes with replacing polyester. Polyester often used as the outer web in laminate constructions. But polypropylene is never going to have the thermal stability that a polyester has. They're different materials. So I think what that means is that compromises have to be made. And when you're looking at shelf life, the acceptance is that someone says, oh, we want shelf life of 2 years, because that's what the existing laminate gives. Actually, when you look into it and you look into what the barrier properties that are actually needed, a lot of it is totally overspecified. So there is room for compromise and discussion with customers in order to get a perfectly functional monomaterial. In terms of recycling, one of the key challenges with laminates is that in general, laminates have sandwiched ink. So they have a reverse printing of one of the substrates, often the polyester. The problem is with delamination, when you're recycling something, you want to get that ink off. So to remove the ink is important, because if you want a true circle here, where you're basically taking a film and then recycling that back into polymer that is suitable for more film, you've got to get the ink off. And if you don't get the ink off, you've got a lot of potential breakdown products from those inks, which will mean that producing a film from them in its second life is practically impossible. So you've got to get the ink off, and that is one of the most important things. But of course, when you've got that ink sandwiched, then the challenge is twice as big, because you then have to delaminate the material during the de-inking step. And that is an extra challenge. But at Innovia, we've been doing a lot of work on that. And basically, I've seen some really good results. And we have plans going forward of how we can both get the functionality and make sure that it truly is recyclable.
And Marika, I wanted to ask you as well, how are you working towards developing innovative label and sleeve materials? And what do your customers focus on in that area?
So I think step one is whenever we develop a solution, we make sure that it's compatible with the Design for Recycling guidelines. I think that's now a no-brainer nowadays, because it doesn't make any sense to develop anything that's not going to be in the new EU regulation, speaking for Europe now. And also we make sure that it fits the existing recycling infrastructure, because there's also like very good mechanical infrastructure in place in Europe. So these are like the two fundamentals that we need to get right when developing something. And that's also, what our customers are looking for. Our customers want to comply with PPWR, the upcoming EU packaging legislation. So what's really important is to be in the Design for Recycling guidelines. So we are part of RECICLAS, but we are also part of PETCOR to make sure that we always are within the green zone of the Design for Recycling guidelines, to make sure that the packaging can actually be recycled in the end. If you look at refillable and reusable bottles in that space, we are also constantly developing our wash-off solutions, which are already in the market and have been proven and are very future-proof. So that's one big area where we try to really look at innovation to drive this forward, to also maybe enable the recyclers to turn down the temperature, so you can have like low temperature wash-off solutions. If you look at the wine and spirits industry, they are looking for thinner materials in general. They are looking for recycled content in label face stock, and also more sustainable printing techniques. Then in this space, you see like a lot of new primary packaging popping up. If you think about paper bottles, for example, if you think about aluminium bottles for wine, which are like showing up, then you have PET bottles for wine, for example, which are lightweight and of course have like those advantages. So we always need to make sure that we have the right decoration technology and the right labels to decorate these new packaging formats. And that's why we also closely work with our customers, but also with our suppliers.
I wanted to come back to you, Stephen, and ask you, how do you ensure that solutions comply with food safety regulations, especially with the recycled content? Because obviously I understand that's quite a challenging area as well.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, currently the only way that we can get food compliance, and here I'm talking about European food compliance, so EFSA, is by the use of chemically recycled material. So chemically recycled material is expensive. The polymer is expensive, and its carbon footprint isn't great. So although we have a solution there with chemically recycled, I don't think it's ever going to be a solution for the large volumes that we're going to need in PPWR by 2030. So I think mechanical recycling we have to crack. And I think it's worth just looking about what EFSA really needs in terms of mechanical recycling. So firstly, it's got to have a consistent known input, basically from food compliant origins. And then as a secondary thing, it then needs suitable processing equipment to remove any contamination. And all of that needs to be measurable and being able to be audited. And a good example of where that's already happened in rigids is with HDPE milk bottles in the UK, which contain recycled content, post-consumer recycled content. So to do that in films is really one of the key challenges that we're focusing on.
And you mentioned the carbon footprint, and obviously there's a growing emphasis on reducing it. How does Innovia Films balance sustainability goals with also maintaining essential packaging functionality?
I think we've got to look at carbon as being the currency of sustainability is what I like to refer it to. So it's very important that we look upon carbon and the total carbon footprint of the combination packaged product and the pack itself. Take an example. If you've got an extended shelf life of lettuce, you're reducing the food wastage of that lettuce, and the carbon that has been been used to get that lettuce way completely outweighs what the packaging film has cost you in carbon terms. So what that means is functionality is king. And it's one of my slight criticisms that we see from a lot of biopolymers, which have apparently good characteristics in terms of sustainability, but functionally, they're not doing the job. They don't have the right barrier properties, for example, to actually preserve the product that they're wrapping. And that's key. You've got to look at the carbon footprint of the pack and the product together. So that's a big part of what we are looking at, is how do we use existing products which can be recycled so they have a second use? How do we use materials that give us all the functionality that we need, but then how do we reduce the carbon footprint of the packaging material itself? And the way that we think to do that is to use bio-sourced polypropylene. And there are a couple of options available out in the market where we can get bio-sourced PP, and that automatically has a very, very low carbon footprint and actually gives us the possibilities of producing a carbon neutral product when it leaves the gates of our factory. So that's the key emphasis, is you've got to make sure that you always look at the combination of materials, the combination of the product, and also the end of life of the product.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. And Marika, I wanted to ask you as well, mirroring a bit what I asked Steve earlier. With labels, what are the challenges of using recycled materials?
Well, I think here you can really start with the two usual suspects, which are availability and quality. So as I think everybody has learned over the past journey of the last couple of years, availability is still debatable. I mean, there's a really nice stream of like rPET, but then you have to ask yourself, are you going to pull the rPET from the bottle stream to make, something else, like a different application? So that's like one of the questions. So we would like to see more high quality input material coming in, because then you always have the question of a lot of, let's say, recycled films tend to have like little specks, have little gels, have little impurities, although that's getting like a lot better through investments that we are also making to improve the quality of our recycled content film. But still, it might be like a little hazier and so on. So that's then up to us as a label converter to see how we can mask these impurities or how we can convert them into like the general design. So this is something that we have done a lot of work around to see how we can use varnishes, different printing technologies to get to the quality that is acceptable to brands. But then on the other hand, brands also need to compromise at some point. And I think Steve touched upon that before, that something needs to give. If you really want to include recycled content into your films, labels, sleeves, product decoration down the line, I think a lot of people also have to rethink if, the quality really needs to be super superior, or if you can also, let's say, communicate with the consumers to make clear that you're actually doing a good thing here. That said, I think there's a lot of good storytelling and a lot of good, let's say, marketing opportunities coming out of this. Because if you look, if you're a brand, for example, that has as one of its pillars of the sustainability strategy is going to be the conservation of the oceans, cleaning up of the oceans. One good thing to concentrate on could also be to include ocean-bound or prevented ocean plastic into your label or sleeve material, because this will give you a compelling story and also make a very authentic case for the pillars that you're actually trying to reach. So I think we will see like a lot of very interesting stories materializing in the next couple of years, and also a lot of interesting recycled content being put into films and labels and sleeves.
Yes, and leading on from that, I wanted to ask you, Marika, how does CCL Label ensure that its innovations align with evolving sustainability regulations, but also consumer demands, which might be contradictory sometimes?
Our approach has always been to collaborate with the whole industry. We are members of many NGOs, but also bodies that, design for recycling guidelines. And we always make sure to also actively contribute in the working groups so that we actually know exactly what's being planned for the next couple of years, and so that we comply with incoming regulations. That said, of course, we also have access to, let's say, consumer reports through our brand customers. So we really collaborate a lot and have a lot of exchange. On top of that, we also go to a lot of conferences to get the information, but also to actively present our new solutions so that they are known to the whole market.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. To wrap up this podcast, could you both maybe give me a little bit of a sneak peek of any exciting developments that you have coming up in 2025? Starting with you, Marika, this time.
Yes, sure. So we have made a lot of good investments last year to have a great base for innovation. For example, we opened up a new sustainable shrink sleeve hub in Spain, and we opened up a new hub for wine and spirits labels in Italy just recently. Products that we have been working on are low temperature versions of our iconic wash off label, for example, which is mainly used for reusable glass bottles, but also increasingly PET bottles. And that enables recyclers to actually turn down the temperature during the recycling process. And as you can imagine, that brings along savings in energy and also CO2 in the end. So that's one product that we are really looking forward to. And then the other product is our white shrink sleeve material. So we have the floatable polyolefin shrink sleeves in the market that have already helped boost PET recycling. But now we are moving on to the next generation, which means that we are putting a functionality into the sleeve. Mainly in this case, it's going to be a light blocking barrier. So if you look at the dairy industry, for example, that needs light blocking qualities to make sure that the food is preserved, you usually use white opaque bottles to do that now. And these white opaque bottles are usually not food grade recycled. So now by putting the light blocking quality into the sleeve, you can actually use a transparent PET bottle that is actually food grade recycled. So this enables brands to close the loop and to really create a circular product.
Great. And what would you like to add to that, Steve?
Yeah, I think 2025 should be an interesting year for Innovia and for the market overall. The first things that I'd like to point out that should be coming this year is CFlex compliant high barrier BOPP films used for mono PP laminates. So that's something that we would really hope to be coming along. But the area that excites me the most is that something that we really need to be looking out for in 2025 is EFSA approved BOPP with mechanical recycled PCR. So the post-consumer recycled combined with an EFSA approval is somewhat the holy grail, and we hope to make significant steps towards that during 2025.
Great. Yeah, we'll look forward to watching this space and see how everything evolves. That brings us to the end of today's podcast. Thank you very much for being here, Marika and Steve. I really enjoyed our conversation today.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we did too. Thank you very much for inviting us.
Thank you. And quick reminder that this year's Sustainable Packaging Summit will be taking place in Utrecht in the Netherlands from November 10th till 12th, and CCL Label and Innovia Films will be there too. If you'd like to find out more or get your tickets, head over to our website, packagingeurope.com, and you'll find more information there. Thanks very much. Goodbye.